Good evening. So, you just received your shiny new Alienware Area 51M and you've installed a bunch of games and you started gaming, right? Only to realize sooner or later that at some point your CPU reaches 100 Celsius and your GPU, once it reaches 80 degrees Celsius, it will thermal throttle and basically it will cut your FPS in half, which means based on the game you're playing that your performance would be terrible. So I've got a couple of requests and a couple of questions on some of my videos on how did I manage to tame the thermals in this machine. So for the record, probably you bought this machine for the same reasons that I did. This machine comes with a fully unlocked i9 or i7 desktop CPU and a fully unlocked, fully under quotes, unlocked GPU. Now, these are not max Q versions of the GPUs and are not, definitely are not mobile CPUs. And because of that, and because they reside in a laptop chassis, obviously the thermals will be pretty hard to maintain and pretty hard to control. So if you believed that everything will work magically and perfectly out of the box, I'm sorry, but that is not the case. However, I still recommend the Area 51M. It's a beast of a machine. And the problem is not with the hardware or the BIOS or the VBIOS. It's more related to the software and what comes pre-installed in the machine. So I've decided to make two videos. One, this one, which will show how you can quickly control your thermals and get the best performance without both your CPU and your GPU not overheating. And later I'll make another video much more in depth on how you can go into full overclocking slash undervolting mode and you can get the best performance out of this machine. So let's get started. So for testing, I'm going to use Wolfenstein Youngblood because it uses with RTX on because it uses both the CPU very heavily and the GPU very heavily. So I found it a good mix of CPU and GPU load. So let's start. So first thing we are going to the Alienware Command Center, and you see I have an overclock. I have the thermal set to quiet just to make things more visible and in a shorter matter, and high performance, and there's the audio profile. So I'm going to launch the game now. For the record, I am using come on. Let me just do that. For the record, my machine has an i9 990K, 9900K or 99K, and I have a full RTX 2080 GPU with the latest BIOS, which caps the power draw to 180 watts. And the BIOS is the one that the one that came pre-installed on my machine, 1.7.3. Now, at some point there was a newer BIOS, 1.8.1, but at some point Dell removed it from their website. I don't know why, but yeah, I played a little bit with it and I couldn't see a big performance impact between 1.7.3 and 1.8.1. But I decided to stick with the 1.7.3 because 1.8.1 is not supported anymore. Okay, so like I was saying, your machine came, you installed your games, you started playing, and sooner or later you will get into something like this, which I'm about to show. So I have everything on maximum, as you can see, ray tracing enabled, DLSS enabled, and so on and so on. So I'm just going to continue the game. So I get inside the game. I have MSI Afterburner installed just to show the FPS and the thermal performance. So my CPU at this point is almost running at 100 degrees. 91, 92, 94, 90, whatever. My GPU is closing to 71 degrees Celsius. As you can see, the load on the CPU is anywhere between 50, 80, 90%. And the GPU is currently running at 1890 megahertz on the core and drawing quite a lot of voltage. As you can see there, 1.02531 volts. So my CPU is already in 100 degrees Celsius. It's thermal throttling once it hits the 100 degrees Celsius. My GPU is at 80 degrees Celsius, and at this point 81. Very soon, yes, it thermal throttles. So now you see the limit. I have temperature and power, and as a result my frame rate from 140 plus, now it's stuck at 55, 56. Now in this game it doesn't really matter, it's still very playable, but this is the thing that you want to avoid. So you don't want half of the performance suddenly while you're gaming. So it will stay like this until it reaches 40 something degrees, and then it will the frequency will bump back up. While the CPU now is still hovering at 85, 90 Celsius with much lower load, because the GPU now is the bottleneck. So going to quit. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. Let's not quit that. Let's run it again and leave it running, so I can show you exactly how we can bypass this. As you can see, I have G-Sync fully enabled. I didn't roll out or revert it to an older BIOS to bypass this thermal limit on the GPU. Now for the record, the hard thermal limit that you get at around 81, 82 Celsius on the GPU is there for a reason. Is there to prevent or to protect your GPU from overheating and basically burning it out. Normally the RTX GPUs have those that thermal limit at 87 Celsius. Alienware, after BIOS 1.5.0, decided to put it at 79, 80, 81. It's hard to tell exactly. So they did it to prevent your GPU from burning out because you can't cool it. And obviously I can't cool it because I'm running on the quiet profile. But the same problem happens on any profile, even on the last one, which is full fan speed. It always happens sooner or later. So how you can avoid this? It's easy. You open Alienware Command Center, you go where it says overclock, and you have a couple of them by default, overclock 1 and overclock 2. Now and all the others are not there. Now I wouldn't recommend using neither of them. Just say overclock 2 off. And go to the Fusion tab and make a new profile. And I'm going to call this profile test, because I want to say test, because we are going to test. So let's start with the CPU. So the first thing is we go to advanced view and we grab this slider on the frequency and we put it in the green zone, 4.7. So we want 4.7 gigahertz on the first two cores slash threads, and then it will go lower on the other threads based on how much they are used or how many they are used. Now here's the thing, how to do the undervolt. So I would go on manual, I put the voltage to minimum 1.1 volts and the offset to minimum 100 millivolts. Test and save. And now we're going to test and we see the temperature, the voltage and the usage. As you can see, once we are using all 8 cores and 16 threads, we are basically running every core and every thread at 4.4 gigahertz. But for example, if you are only going to use the first and the second core, it will go up to 4.7. So under load we get 92, 93 on quiet profile. So let's save that. And that's about it. Now, if you're using this profile and at some point you get some weird freezes while, I don't know, watching videos, using notepad or whatever, your computer suddenly freezes and reboots, is because of the undervolt. The undervolt will be too low. So what you want to do is to come here and put the voltage offset a little bit higher. So from minus 100 put it to minus 90 or minus 80. You basically need to try it out to see what is working on your chip, because not every chip not every chip is identical to the next one. This is basically what's called the silicon lottery. So now that we've done the CPU, we'll go to the GPU and we want a thermal limiter 76. Let's put it 76. Yeah, or you can keep it at 75, but I like 76. The core clock, this is basically the overclock. We can either leave it at 0, but I like 100 megahertz. Sounds fine. So we are currently going to overclock the GPU and set a thermal limit. This is different than the hard limit that we are seeing at 79. So there is a reason we put this at 78 and not higher. This thermal limit, which is the soft thermal limit, and you'll see it very soon how it works, is different than the hard limit, which is encoded or embedded in the BIOS. And once that one is reached, the clocks will drastically drop down in order to cool your GPU and prevent any hardware damage. So, and let's put them on to 100. So the reason I put it at 76 to 79, there are only 3 degrees Celsius difference. The GPU could bump the load instantly, so the temperature could spike from 76 to 79 instantly, and we don't want that. So we'll keep it like that. We're testing it. I'm not sure this test is actually doing anything because, yeah, the clock doesn't look right, but whatever. So we save that, and now we go back to home and we select our new overclock, which basically is 4.7 on the first cores, down to 4.4 when all cores are enabled and used, with a voltage of 1.1 volts and an offset of 100 millivolts, minus 100 millivolts. As for the GPU, we have a thermal limit on 76, an overclock of 100 on the core and 200 on the memory. So if we go back to the game and we run it, My game is still in the GPU is still in the power limit, temperature limit from before. So let's reset that. We'll go to overclock off. And we'll apply it again. And it's still stuck. Interesting. Let's change the thermals. Right, so I reset it, and now it will ramp up. As you can see, my CPU is running at 4.4 megahertz. However, the temperature now is around 74, 73 Celsius instead of 100, and we reached the 76 Celsius, at which point we get a temperature limit, but the GPU is still around 1900 megahertz instead of being downclocked to 300, 500, and our FPS being 50 frames instead of 133. So at this point, no loss in performance, and both the CPU and the GPU are running at a very good temperature, 75, 78, 80 degrees. There it's hovering. I mean, the load is spiking. So, and the performance is pretty awesome. And now the GPU is at around 1800, 1775 from what I've seen. But you don't get that nasty thermal throttle. For the record, if I search RTX 2080 specs, and we'll get from NVIDIA, we scroll down, we see the specs, and we see the build specs. RTX 2080, and as the Founders Edition, the boost clock, the maximum is 1710 for the reference spec, and the Founders Editions came with the boost clock to 1800 megahertz. So if you look in our game, we are boosting to 1800, 1755, so we are somewhere between the reference spec and Founders Edition, which means our GPU is fully working according to spec. The only thing is that the temperature is keeping the boost in check, so we are basically saying do not allow this card to go higher than 75 degrees. Use the clock in such a manner that the temperature is still locked at 75 Celsius. And as you can see, we are running perfectly fine at 120 frames per second, 25, 110, 18, and this is on the absolute uber mein Lieben graphics quality with full RTX or ray tracing support and DLSS mode on quality, so the latest performance, and G-Sync and everything, right? So like this, your CPU will not overheat, your GPU will not overheat, and you will not have a problem with the thermals in this laptop. So again, the only thing I did was to make a new profile. On the CPU, I put the frequency in the green field. This is for the i9 9900K. For the i7 9700 100K, it should be the same, but the values will be a little bit different. So put it where the green ends, select manual, put the voltage to the minimum, put the offset to the minimum, test. If you have a performance problem, your computer hangs or resets, or you get a blue screen, come here again and just increase the offset by 10. I would recommend increasing it by 10 millivolts rather than by 5, but that's just me. So that's it. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I plan to make another video in which I'm going to show how we can get that performance back, both on the CPU and on the GPU, with a proper undervolt both on the CPU and the GPU. So on the CPU side, we can boost up to 5 gigahertz on the first cores, 4.9 on the second, on the last next two, 4.8 on the next two, and so on, which is basically according to the default spec. And on the GPU side, how you can overclock your GPU and undervolt your GPU so you get the performance back without having the same impact as we've seen it now. Also, I'm going to show how we can bypass the 79 Celsius hard thermal throttle that the BIOS commands. So if you want to put your laptop in full fan mode and just overclock it and run it, for example, for VR, where you need the absolute maximum performance out of it, we can do that. So stay tuned. Thank you, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you. Bye.